The year was 1887, and winter had laid its heavy hand upon the west. The little station stood like a forgotten tooth in the jaw of the prairie, its roof hunched beneath snow, its lanterns casting amber pools that shivered in the wind. 3 days had passed since Aaron Calloway first stepped off the train, clutching a paper packet of letters that had promised her a husband, a home, perhaps even a measure of belonging. 3 days, and no one had come. She sat now on the splintered bench beneath the eaves, her shawl thin as smoke against the bitter cold. The wool had long since lost its warmth, and her breath plumed white as if the air itself were trying to carry her away. Travelers hurried past with collars pulled high, some sparing her a glance edged with pity, others with the cutting sharpness of judgment. To them she was only a stranded mail-order bride, an abandoned bargain, poor and unclaimed. "Maybe I came to the wrong platform," she whispered, though the words felt foolish in the silence that followed. Aaron was 27, though hardship had etched its shadow earlier than it should have. Orphanhood, hunger, and the shifting, ruthless years had pressed her beauty into something fragile, easily overlooked until the light caught her face and revealed the persistence of grace. But no light lingered now, only snow and the sound of iron wheels fading down the line. She had approached men on the platform, tentative as a child, asking if they were waiting for a bride. One laughed, tipping his hat mockingly. "Not for you, miss." Another waved her off, muttering about swindles. The last shook his head without meeting her eyes. Each rejection pressed harder against her ribs, until she feared her chest might crack open under the weight of shame. Inside the station, town women with bonnets tied snug leaned close to whisper. 3 days and no man to fetch her? Must be something wrong with her. Aaron heard them through the window glass, the words striking like stones. She bent lower, pretending to study the snow piled at her boots, but their judgment clung to her skin like frost. By dusk of the 3rd day, hunger gnawed sharp in her belly. She rose, legs trembling, and walked out into the snow-choked street, unsure where her feet might take her. Her shoes were worn thin, icy wet seeped through and numbed her toes. The wind cut against her cheekbones, stealing her tears before they could fall. It was then she noticed him. A tall figure, broad of shoulder, coat dark against the snow, stood apart near the freight office. He watched without seeming to. His hat brim shadowed his face, but when the lantern light caught him, she glimpsed features steady, stern, carved as though from stone weathered by wind. Roger McAllister. She did not yet know his name, but the town did. They called him wealthy in land but poor in words, a man who carried silence like others carried pistols. He had seen her all along, though he gave no sign. Perhaps he thought it mercy to let her keep what little pride she had left. But when she staggered on the road out of town, nearly folding into the snowbank, he moved. Boot steps crunched behind her. Aaron did not turn. Shame burned hotter than the cold now, and she thought it kinder if he passed her by, a stranger among strangers. Instead, his voice, deep and spare, reached her. "You'll not last the night walking that road." She stopped, breath shuddering. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, with a voice that trembled more from weariness than fear, she whispered, "Only one night's shelter, if you know a place." He did not answer at once. Silence stretched, filled with the hiss of snow against the pines. At last he said, "One night, then another, if you can bear the judgment that comes with it." Her head lifted, startled by the weight of his words. Not refusal, not pity. Something heavier, edged with choice. The walk to his cabin was near wordless. His stride was measured, hers faltering, yet he slowed enough that she never fell behind. The snow thickened, curling around lantern light, softening the world to shadow and glow. When at last the cabin appeared, its roof draped in white, its chimney sending a thin ribbon of smoke into the night, Aaron's knees nearly gave from relief. Roger pushed open the door and stepped aside. Heat breathed out from the hearth, rich with the scent of stew that had simmered long. Aaron stepped in, clutching her shawl as if still braced for refusal. The room was plain, rough-hewn table, a single chair worn smooth, the fire crackling over logs hewn by his hand. It was not wealth that warmed her, but the quiet dignity of use. "Sit," he said simply, gesturing to the chair. Her legs obeyed. He ladled stew into a tin bowl and set it before her. The first taste nearly undid her. Warmth spread through her hollowed body, and for a moment she closed her eyes, savoring the miracle of being fed. When she looked up, Roger was watching, his expression unreadable, as though measuring her hunger against something unspoken in himself. She noticed then how silence clothed him. It was not awkward, but chosen, like a coat he wore year-round. She did not know yet what had driven him into it, only that he had built his life upon it. And now, here she sat, a stranger brought in from a storm, testing its weight. Aaron's secret pressed in her pocket, a folded letter worn soft from too many hands. She kept her palm against it, as if hiding it from the firelight. The knowledge of it made her heart pound. If he knew, he would cast her out, as others had before. Better to keep it until the morning, she thought, when she could slip away unnoticed. But she could not slip away tonight. Not from the storm. Not from the warmth of the quilt he drew from the chest and placed across her shoulders, with hands roughened by years of labor. The fabric smelled faintly of cedar. His touch was steady, neither tender nor cold, but it made her throat ache with gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking like thin ice. He did not reply, only gave a brief nod, then settled himself near the hearth, eyes on the flames. The storm outside deepened. Snow tapped against the windows like fingers asking entry. Inside, the silence between them grew thick, yet not empty. Aaron stared into the fire, wondering if she had stumbled not into shelter, but into a different storm altogether, one that might change her life in ways she could not yet name. And in her pocket, the letter burned, its secret waiting to be found. The morning after the storm broke pale and sharp, sunlight glinting across the snow like 1,000 shards of glass. Aaron rose before Roger stirred, her body aching from the wooden chair where she had dozed beneath his quilt. For a moment she stood by the window, breath fogging the pain, watching the unbroken white stretch toward town. She felt both sheltered and exposed in this cabin, as if the world outside knew she did not belong. The folded letter in her pocket pressed heavy as stone, and she wondered how long she could keep its secret hidden. Roger's boots scuffed against the floorboards. He lit the fire without a word, his movements practiced, deliberate, yet something softer edged his silence now. He placed a cup of coffee near her hand, steam curling between them. He did not ask her story, and she did not offer it. Instead, they shared the room in a hush filled only with the crackle of wood and the distant call of crows. By noon she ventured into town beside him, her head bowed against the cold. Eyes turned, whispers carried. Clara May, the seamstress, stood with arms crossed, voice pitched to reach every ear. There she is. Mail-order bride, left behind. And now Roger McAllister keeps her under his roof. Shameful. Laughter followed, brittle and sharp. Aaron's cheeks burned as if slapped. She longed to vanish into the snow. Roger said nothing, but his presence beside her was immovable, a wall of quiet strength. He guided her through the stairs with the briefest touch at her elbow, his jaw set. The sheriff's gaze followed them from the boardwalk, hard but not unkind. "You're risking your name, Roger," Amos muttered as they passed. Roger did not slow. Back at the cabin, Erin's shame spilled into motion. She scrubbed the hearth until her knuckles ached, mended torn linens, and swept the floor with a fury born of humiliation. Roger returned from the barn to find his home transformed, the cold edges softened by her touch. She looked up, startled, expecting reproach, but he only set down a small bundle, her boots, repaired and stitched with his own rough hands. He pushed them toward her with a quiet nod. She pressed her lips together, unable to speak. Gratitude swelled in her chest, mingling with something more dangerous, hope. The days that followed were measured by small mercies. She stirred stew he stacked wood. He poured her tea without asking. She left an extra log on the fire before his return. Their silences no longer weighed heavy, but grew companionable, as if both carried wounds too deep for words, yet found balm in each other's presence. Still, the letter in her pocket burned hotter with each passing day, a truth she feared would undo everything. One evening, the town gathered in the meeting hall, lanterns flickering against frosted windows. Roger went, and Aaron, though reluctant, followed. The murmur of voices swelled when she entered at his side. Clara May wasted no time. "It's a scandal," she declared. "A woman of no account, living in his house without a vow spoken, will not have the town's good name dragged through the mud." Aaron's throat closed. She lowered her gaze, heat rising to her cheeks. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, agreement, disapproval, pity. She clutched the letter in her pocket, the words inside branding her as unworthy. She thought of leaving then, sparing him further shame. But Roger stepped forward, his silence breaking like a dam. His voice, deep and steady, carried through the hall. "You speak of scandal," he said, eyes fixed on Clara May, "but I speak of a woman's dignity. She is under my roof, and she is under my protection. Judge me if you must, but you will not shame her." Gasps spread like wind through dry grass. The sheriff's stern face softened, and he tipped his hat with a quiet respect. Clara May faltered, her lips pursed, but no words came. The room hushed, the judgment that had pressed so heavy now stripped of its weight. Aaron's heart pounded. She had expected rejection, yet he had stood before the town for her. His silence turned to thunder in her defense. That night, by firelight, she could not hold the secret any longer. With trembling hands, she unfolded the letter and laid it on the table between them. Her voice quavered. "This is why he never came for me. The man I was to wed discovered what I carried, a debt not mine to bear, and a shame no decent man would claim. I thought if I hid it, perhaps—" Her words faltered. Roger read the letter, his face shadowed by firelight. When he lifted his gaze, it was steady, unwavering. "Whatever the West says," he murmured, "it will not be the last word in this cabin." Her breath caught. No man had ever answered her shame with anything but rejection. His words did not erase the burden, but they shifted it, as if his shoulders had taken half its weight. Tears welled in her eyes, slipping hot down her cheeks. She turned away, but he reached, not to grasp, only to place the quilt once more around her shoulders. It was enough. The gossip did not vanish, but it lost its sting. Each time Aaron ventured into town, whispers still followed, yet beside Roger's steady stride, she felt less alone. His quiet gestures became her anchor, boots repaired, tea poured, the cabin warmed. And in return, her presence softened the sharp edges of his solitude. The cabin that had once echoed with silence now held the cadence of shared life. Winter deepened, yet within those walls a different season stirred. Aaron found herself laughing once softly when a pot boiled over, and Roger's startled smile, brief but genuine, was worth more than any treasure. She realized then that love need not arrive in thunder or roses. It could grow in silence, in quilts placed on weary shoulders, in a man standing before the West and refusing its scorn. The climax came one evening as snow fell thick, muffling the world in white. A knock rattled the cabin door. Townsfolk stood outside, lanterns held high, Clara May among them. Their voices demanded clarity, decency, proof that Roger had not shamed them all by sheltering her. The weight of their expectation pressed like an avalanche. Aaron's hand shook. She feared this was the end, that Roger's silence would stretch too long, and they would tear her from the only shelter she had known. But Roger opened the door wide, snow swirling in, and drew Aaron forward to stand beside him. His arm came around her shoulders, not tentative but firm, anchoring her against the storm of eyes. His voice rang clear, steady as iron. "There is no shame here. She is mine, and I am hers. You will hear our vows before God this very night." The crowd gasped, some in outrage, some in awe. The sheriff stepped forward, lantern light glinting on his badge. "If that's your word, Roger, then I'll see it done proper." And there, with the storm as witness and the West itself held at bay, Aaron and Roger spoke vows by lantern glow. Her borrowed ribbon trembled in her hair, his rough hand covered hers, and together they stood unbowed before gossip, judgment, and winter's wrath. As the last words were spoken, Aaron felt the burden she had carried since the station lift, replaced by a dignity rooted in love and chosen silence, broken at last. The cabin behind them glowed with firelight, a beacon against the dark. Sometimes the West tries to strip a soul bare with cold and shame, but there are men who answer with steadfastness, and women who learn their worth in the reflection of such unwavering eyes. And so, the orphaned bride who once waited at the wrong platform found she had been led, step by step, to the right door all along.